Dear Santa, please send me a dad. Her letter to Santa ended up on the desk of a lonely billionaire. Winter wrapped New York City in its sharpest cold. Wind sliced through narrow streets, sweeping fallen snow into corners like forgotten memories. It was the kind of cold that settled in the lungs and stayed there. 5-year-old Julia Carter pulled her scarf tighter, breath fogging the fabric as she coughed. A dry, persistent sound that never left her when the weather turned. Her small hand gripped her mother's tightly. Angela Carter walked briskly. 28, slim, pale blonde hair twisted in a bun. Her coat was too thin for the temperature, but she never complained. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and helping at a discount store on weekends. Whatever money she had went toward rent, groceries, and Julia's medication for her chronic respiratory issues. Their apartment sat on the 5th floor of a rundown building in Queens. 1 room, 1 bed, a flickering space heater that barely worked. Nights were cold and quiet, except for Julia's cough and the soft hum of the city below. Every Friday, before her shift, Angela stopped outside a fast food place and let Julia sit by the window. Inside, children laughed, ketchup on their fingers, while their fathers lifted them into high chairs or fed them pieces of fried chicken. Julia never asked to go in. She just watched, cheeks pressed to the foggy glass, eyes wide, chest rising with soft wheezes. She never said a word, but Angela saw her reflection in the window, in the golden light, and it made her ache. That night, back home, Julia couldn't stop thinking about how her mother's smiles always faded too quickly, how her laughter never sounded like the ones in the restaurant. She wasn't old, but her eyes looked older than anyone Julia knew. While Angela boiled water for noodles, Julia curled under a blanket, coughing. When her mother wasn't looking, she reached for a piece of lined paper from her notebook, grabbed a dull pencil, and began to write. Dear Santa, please send me a dad. Not for me, but for Mommy too. I think she's lonely. Love, Julia Carter. Mommy, Angela. Beneath the words, she drew a picture. 3 people, tall man, smiling woman with a bun, and a curly-haired girl in the middle. They were all holding hands, all laughing. She folded the letter carefully, tucked it into her backpack, and waited for the right moment to send it. The next day, Angela took Julia grocery shopping. The sky was steel gray, the wind harsher. Julia coughed almost the whole way. Angela had no choice but to bring her. Childcare was too expensive, and the neighbor who sometimes helped was out of town. At the store, as Angela counted change at checkout, Julia spotted it outside, a bright red box beside the building, labeled in bold white letters, Customer Suggestions, Grayson Holdings. But to Julia, it looked exactly like a mailbox for Santa Claus. She tiptoed forward, pulled the letter from her backpack, and slipped it into the slot. Her lips moved silently. Please find him, Santa. Angela turned just as Julia came skipping back. What were you doing, honey? Nothing, Julia said, smiling small. Angela tousled her curls, unaware. She didn't see the letter disappear inside a box that wasn't magical, but would soon become part of something close. Monday morning, top floor of Grayson Holdings. CEO Kevin Grayson sifted through a pile of printed customer feedback left by his assistant. 34. Sharp-suited, brilliant, emotionally distant, he reviewed the notes with mechanical focus. Most were the same. Complaints, requests, complaints again. Then, between 2 forms, a piece of notebook paper fluttered down. Unofficial, childlike. He frowned, opened it. Dear Santa, please send me a dad. He froze. Love, Julia Carter. Mommy, Angela. Angela Carter. The name hit him like a sudden jolt. Months earlier, during a small electrical fire in the storage level, a janitorial staff member had saved an elderly man, pulling him out, staying calm, administering first aid. She refused any reward. He remembered going down himself. Saw her. Ash on her cheek, hand burned, blonde hair pulled back, eyes steady. Angela Carter. Now, her child had written to Santa, Not for toys, but for a father, for her mother. Kevin stared at the drawing. 3 stick figures, smiling. Something caught in his chest. Outside his window, snow had begun to fall. Soft, slow. He held the letter. He didn't smile, didn't speak, but he didn't put it down either. And for the first time in years, something inside him whispered, "Don't ignore this." The office was quiet, the early winter sun barely piercing through the tall glass windows of the Grayson Holdings headquarters. Kevin Grayson sat at his desk, sifting through the weekly collection of suggestion box submissions. Most were typed, stapled, and organized into neat stacks by his assistant. He read them with the same detached focus he applied to every task. Efficient, emotionless. Better lighting in the employee break room. Security needs to double-check ID badges at the west entrance. Please fix the vending machine on floor 7. It ate my dollar again. Kevin barely blinked. It was routine, predictable, forgettable, until his fingers brushed something different. A small piece of paper, hand-folded and tucked messily between 2 formal complaints. No header, no office stationery, just faint pencil markings on the outside, and a crease down the middle as if a child had pressed it shut with careful, clumsy hands. He unfolded it slowly. The first line stopped him cold. "Dear Santa, please send me a dad." Kevin stared at the words for a long moment. Not a joke. Not spam. He read on. A simple drawing. 3 stick figures. A tall man, a woman with a bun, and a small girl between them holding their hands. All 3 were smiling. Below, in uneven print, "Love, Julia Carter." "Mommy, Angela Carter." Kevin froze. He did not recognize the drawing, but the name, Angela Carter. The name that had stayed in his memory since that day in the warehouse 3 months ago. There had been a minor electrical fire, smoke, confusion. One of the senior maintenance workers collapsed from light smoke inhalation. And while the emergency team hadn't yet arrived, someone had already acted. Not a manager, not a safety officer, a janitor. He had arrived at the scene moments later, per protocol, and saw her kneeling beside the man, blonde hair loose from her clip, sleeves rolled up, voice calm as she supported his breathing and wrapped his shoulders in her own coat. Her hand was slightly burned. He remembered offering to call medical assistance. She declined. "I'm fine," she'd said. "It's just something anyone would do." But it wasn't something just anyone would do. She had gone back to cleaning, ignoring the soot on her hands. Quiet, unassuming. That was the moment he'd remembered her name. Not because she needed recognition, but because he couldn't shake the way she reminded him of someone else. His mother, a woman who had scrubbed floors, worked night shifts, raised him alone, and who had collapsed one day without anyone there to help. Now, her daughter, Julia, was writing letters to Santa, not asking for toys, not for games, but for a father, for her mother. Kevin read the line again. "Not for me, but for Mommy too. I think she's lonely." His chest tightened. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, blinking hard. A memory surfaced, him at 6 years old, curled under a blanket, writing in a journal because they couldn't afford postage. He had scrawled the same thing. "I wish someone would help my mom." He hadn't believed in Santa, but he had believed in hope. And now, 30 years later, another little girl had placed that same hope in a red box outside his building. A coincidence? Maybe. But it didn't feel that way. Kevin looked again at the letter. The lower corner had a slight water stain, maybe from the snow, or tears. The handwriting was shaky. This was truly a young child. She had written carefully, deliberately, and every word had landed like a quiet plea. Something stirred in him. Not obligation, not guilt, something else. He found himself wondering, why is Angela still struggling like this? Why does her daughter feel the need to wish for something so fundamental? Why now, right before Christmas, is this letter on my desk? Kevin didn't believe in fate. He believed in systems, control, outcomes. But this letter, This was not part of a system. It was personal. He placed the drawing back down on his desk. Next to it, the letter. There was no corporate protocol for this, no line in the employee handbook telling him how to respond. But he knew one thing. He could not ignore it. Kevin stared out at the snowy skyline for a long time. Then he said, under his breath, as if the words surprised even him, "Julia Carter, Angela Carter, I need to know more." Not out of pity, not because he felt responsible, but because, after all these years, his heart, long frozen, had just moved. Angela Carter's days blurred together like the gray winter sky above New York, monotonous, heavy, and unyielding. Her shift at Grayson Holdings started in the late afternoon and ended well past midnight. After clocking out, she moved to the warehouse where she handled inventory until 2 in the morning. She barely spoke. She barely slept. But she always smiled when she came home. Her daughter, Julia, was waiting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her small body curled tight against the cold. As Angela removed her shoes, she coughed, softly at first, then in short bursts that made her lean against the wall to steady her breath. Julia walked over, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, I'm already big. You don't have to work so much." Angela knelt down, brushing a curl from Julia's cheek. "I'm okay, baby. We're okay." But the warmth in her voice couldn't hide the fatigue in her eyes. At work, Angela moved like a shadow, efficient, invisible, forgettable. She greeted people politely, but never lingered. She volunteered for extra shifts, stayed silent when others complained. "She's kind," someone once said, "but it's like she's carrying a whole world we can't see." Angela didn't mind being invisible, until one small moment made her seen. That day, the cafeteria was quiet when Angela picked up her dinner, a tray of soup and bread. As she turned toward a table, another coughing fit hit. Her hands trembled, and the tray slipped, crashing loudly to the floor. The room went still. A few interns nearby exchanged looks, some laughing softly. Angela said nothing. She dropped to her knees, picking up the mess with shaking hands. Kevin Grayson walked by. He paused. He didn't speak, didn't help. But his eyes lingered for a beat longer than usual. Later that week, their worlds quietly touched again. Julia had coughed through the night. She had a mild fever, and daycare wasn't an option. With no one to help, Angela brought her to work, asking permission for Julia to stay in the break lounge near the warehouse. She wrapped her in a scarf, handed her crayons and paper. Julia promised to be quiet. Kevin was walking through the basement on his end-of-week inspection when he noticed a small figure sitting alone. A little girl with brown curls, drawing on her knees, a thick scarf wrapped around her neck. She coughed into her sleeve, eyes focused. He slowed his steps. The girl looked up and offered a polite, raspy, "Hi, mister." He blinked, surprised. He sat on the bench across from her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Julia Carter." The world tilted just slightly. His gaze dropped to her drawing. 3 figures. A small one in the middle, smiling. "What are you drawing?" "Me. And Mommy. And someone else. I don't know him yet, but Mommy needs him too." Kevin couldn't answer. Could barely breathe. Angela appeared, breathless. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Grayson. I'll take her out." Kevin stood, calm. "It's all right. Let her rest. Kids get cold easier than we do." Angela hesitated, then nodded, guiding Julia's hand back to the crayons. Kevin walked away, but something in him stayed behind. Back in his office, he opened Julia's letter again. Before, it had been sweet. Now, it was real. He unfolded the drawing inside. It matched the one she'd been sketching. Same 3 stick figures, same warmth, same longing. No more guessing. He knew who she was, and who her mother was, and he knew, quietly, that he couldn't walk away. He was no longer observing from a distance. He had stepped, gently, unexpectedly, into their story, not out of pity, but because something inside him had finally responded to a call he'd buried for years. Kevin Grayson was no longer the same after meeting Julie.